All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Two-Wheeled Rider podcast presented by JT Motorsports. That's new.
Yes.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Listen, guys, just before we get started, I just want to address something. I realize what's going on across the country, what's going on across the world. I know a lot of you have been quarantined or sheltered at home, and there's a lot of, strange stuff going on right now. And we've had to deal with it the last couple of weeks. I know Brian's been, kind of stuck working from home. I know a lot of people have been stuck working from home or, sometimes, unfortunately, they can't work at all. We realize what's going on, but we're not a news podcast. We're a motorcycle podcast. We love talking about bikes. And if this helps you guys get through this mess, then that's what we're here for. If you want to listen to it a few weeks from now and hopefully this stuff's passed by, that's great too. We are trying to keep our 6-foot distance, but Brian and I really like each other, so we like to sit a little bit closer together. But to combat that, we've taken the necessary precautions. Also, we've deemed ourselves mission essential because we are the media, even though maybe just a small 2-person company. But so that's where we stand. Hopefully you guys are able to enjoy this. We've got a great guest lined up today. We've got Johnny Hopper joining us out of Colorado. He's going to be joining us remotely via Skype. We've never done this before. It's something new. So really excited about that because I don't know about you, Brian, but I miss riding, and I'll be glad when this stuff's over.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, at least we're talking about motorcycles, but just want to get it back out there at the races and around the friends and get back on the bike. I think there's no better way than to get through some stressful times than riding.
Speaking of riding, JT Motorsports, super excited to have these guys on board. We're going to play a little ad for them later on. They've been helping you out for a long time. They've been helping me out for a while now. We'll talk about how they're going to help our listeners out. They are still open right now. They are allowed to continue to operate out of Frederick, Maryland. They're working on bikes, prepping bikes, selling bikes. Anything you need from them, hit them up. But hopefully they're going to be with us for a long time. So
yeah, I think it's just cool. I think what they're doing right now is pretty interesting too. They're offering to deliver bikes, pick up your bike for maintenance. So I think that's what's so neat about this company and partnering with them is just they're always trying to do something new, something different, and to just really help the motorcycle enthusiasts out there.
Yep, for sure. So, and we're going to be doing plenty with them as time goes on. All right, so it's the Two-Wheeled Rider podcast. I'm your host, Mario Orsini. It's been a while since we've done this. Obviously, Brian Boyer is my co-host. As we do every episode, so everybody knows, we can see Johnny over here. We're just ignoring him right now, and I have him muted so he can't say anything. And I feel bad for him because if he were in studio, he would get to partake in this. But we have our first ever whiskey sponsor. Your dad stepped up, gave us a bottle of Maker's Mark. It's already pre-poured. So as usual, we'll have our cheers to that. Big thanks to your dad. And I think Johnny's drinking like some sort of green shake over there. Something I don't know.
It's early his time though.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. It's early. It's like 11 a.m. our time. We'll show some B-roll footage on the YouTube video of how we poured this. And if you follow me on Instagram and you happen to be following me today, which today is March 28th, you probably saw that crazy contraption already. But that was pretty cool. So big thanks to your dad. We're going to get into, some of the supporters of the podcast here. Just some things I want you guys to keep in mind. Like today, we're planning on recording at least 2. We may record 3. So if you contributed like very recently after, today, the 28th, you may not hear your name for a few weeks. We're not ignoring you. We will, the first episode we record once you've been a contributor at some level, we'll give you the shout out. Like we're not forgetting about anybody. So just to run down through the list real quickly at the contributor level, and we'll discuss this later on how this works. Luke Harding's on at the contributor level. He's been with us the longest. Dylan on Patreon. Alexander Marsh is a new one on Patreon. We've got Amanda Knapp from She Shall Ride at the production crew level. We're actually going to be interviewing her later today, so look for that podcast in a couple of weeks. We've got SRT AMA East Hair Scrambles presented by Beta. We were planning on doing a live podcast with those guys, which is going to be so much fun. That may be put on hold due to the whole, COVID thing going on right now. But I think we'll make that happen before the end of the season. That one's going to be fun. Morgan Graves on at the production crew level on Patreon. At the executive producer level, we have Jeff Hokinson, and then we had a one-time contribution out of Canada from Mr. Christopher Brown. Thank you so much for the $20 you pledged to the show. All right, guys, that's our intro. That's our spiel. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to Johnny Hopper, and we're going to talk some Supercross. When Brian and I need something for our bikes, we head to JT Motorsports in Frederick, Maryland. JT's recently moved into a brand new, huge facility, conveniently located just minutes off of I-270 and I-70. Their massive showroom floor holds brand new models from Polaris, Can-Am, Kawasaki, Suzuki, Husqvarna, KTM, and now specialized e-bikes. If you haven't tried an e-bike, you have to. Those things are so much fun to ride. And for the wee little riders, check out their line of Stasic Kids bikes, which are the perfect way to get youngsters involved in riding. Their showroom floor also features a huge selection of riding gear, accessories, and other essentials to keep your machines running good and looking good. They carry some of the top brands in riding gear, including Arai and Climb. Need parts for your bike? They keep a ton of parts in stock and ship daily. Heck, you even have the option to call, email, or text your parts orders in. If you don't like working on your own bike, that's okay, because they have a full service department that will work on any maker model. Just mention the Two Wheeled Rider podcast when you call, email, text, or stop in the shop, and you'll immediately get a 10% discount on parts and accessories. Visit jtmotorsports.net or call 301-846-4318. And if you didn't write that down, don't worry. You can find it in the podcast show notes or YouTube video description along with their address. All right, let's get back to the show. All right, guys, we are back. Once again, huge shout out to JT Motorsports. So happy to have them on board. They're going to hook you guys up just like they've been hooking us up for a long time. Johnny?
Am I not muted?
Nope, you're not muted anymore. You are live. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome pro motocross rider, former arena cross rider, YouTube sensation, and all-around good guy.
Retired.
Okay.
Just, am I allowed to cuss?
Yeah, you can cuss.
We try to.
I mean, we try to keep it family friendly. We'll let if words get too out of hand, I'll always go in and bleep them or something.
I will do my best to behave.
All right. So, Johnny, we wanted to have you on. I know you've. Did I leave anything out aside from the fact that you're retired now?
I guess I'm a. Gosh, I don't think I could say that word. A poopster, I guess is the term nowadays. I complain a lot, and it's basically just because of things that I've been through. And apparently, people like hearing people complain. So
people like hearing people complain, and going through your comment section from time to time. People like to complain about you complaining.
Oh yeah. It's I'd like to say that I'm the most hated motorcycle enthusiast on the internet. Sometimes it seems like.
Yeah, but I think why you have a big following there is just it's real. It's real talk. You're truthful. You're giving your opinion. You're not sugarcoating it.
Dude, I spent my entire life. Like I skipped school because I was going, man, I did graduate. It took me a little bit longer, and I've got some other stuff, but I skipped school all the time because my dad and I, we just went riding, and the plan was to turn pro. And when I turned pro, things got really difficult. And in the industry, you've got to be extremely fake. So you got to kind of kiss everybody's butts. And it's a little bit more about who you know rather than your skill set. Because at the elite level, there's so much money. It's not just kind of run what you brung and go about it. And the general population don't get it. They see guys show up at the races like Tomac and these guys. Not that, Tomac and I, we probably don't get that along. We've had our instances, but what I'm trying to say is you see these guys when you go to an event and they just look another tier above all the other riders, but they've got nicer equipment, they've got better suspension, they've already been on the track for 40 minutes the day before. And the majority guys that come straight out of the LCQ like myself, we're learning the track that first qualifying lap. And Tomac and these other guys have already had 40 minutes on it. So they already know their rhythms, what they're going to do. It's a little bit more chill and relaxed. And granted, it would take riders that are even better than me a little bit extra time to learn that track, learn the rhythm. But once they got it down, they wouldn't be that far off if you were giving them the same equipment. I'm a big advocate for potentially a union. I know that sounds very liberal, but a union for the professional riders, because in all the other professional sports, you have some sort of sanction to help the pros.
Well, a lot of the bigger sports do have some sort of union, whether it's the NFL or the NBA. You know, they've got some sort of players union that can help negotiate contracts and percentages and stuff. And we're going to get into some of this. I just have a question for you. I know you've been on kind of lockdown lately. You doing okay?
Yeah. I'm not a big people person to begin with, so.
So Johnny maybe never would have come in studio anyway. He might have just said, no, I'm going to call. But to be fair, so just to give people a little bit of background, I started following your channel probably a little over a year ago because you were posting Supercross content during Supercross season. I found it interesting. I found it refreshing. And I found it entertaining. And I think I DM'd you or something on Instagram. And then what was it? A few months later, I happened to be out in Colorado. You invited me out while you're doing, at your test track. We hung out. Despite what some people may think of you on the internet, I find you to be a very nice person and a pretty good people person, when it comes down to it. But I get what you're saying, where you don't necessarily.
Yeah. I get a lot of the time at the track where people are like, I hate that guy. There's no way he's that nice. There's no way. And I find it that even if there's somebody you don't like, you can still smile and kind of give them the finger at the same time. So
that's a good balance.
That's perfect. So I want to know, it was just a few weeks ago, Brian and I were at the Daytona round, which is the last round of Supercross we've seen so far.
Yeah.
It was within the next few days we found out that Seattle wasn't going to happen. And then we found out maybe a couple days before, the day of, Indy's not going to. What was your overall reaction, or what was your first reaction when you found out we're postponing the rest of the season?
I was, first of all, it was bummed for the riders because there's a lot of guys that are losing sponsorships, and because nobody can afford it right now because the whole government is shut down. But I thought it was the correct thing to do. I know. It seems most states right now are on lockdown, and it's only essential businesses are able to work. And it's interesting that none of the athletes, are able to work. So are they essential? It's kind of interesting. But I was bummed. I was bummed as a viewer and as a fan because I don't know what to do on my Saturday night, not having Supercross, and I don't know what to talk about if there's no racing going on. But the world goes on, and I think it's got a little bit more to do with political correctness. Nobody wants to be sued if from the top tier, the feds are saying, hey, we're shutting down, The NBA shuts down, Formula One shuts down, MotoGP shuts down. It just made sense that Supercross was going to be next.
So how do you feel like Feld and the AMA and the sanctioning bodies, how do you feel like they handled the notification to the riders? And I'm not talking like the pro teams, that's one level, but there's plenty of guys that are packing up their moto van and heading to the track, or
they got to drive far away.
Yeah, we know I'm not a huge fan of Feld or AMA. I had the press guys contact me, and they didn't like my video that I posted because apparently people were watching it. But no, I think they do again, trying to be PG here, a very poor job of conveying to the privateers. They treat the top guys that are making them money, the Tomacs, the Roxons, the Muscans, the Webbs, they treat them on a pedestal. But then the guys that are 20th through 40th, they don't really care about. So you'll get an email when you're within an hour, 100 miles of the stadium, and find out that it's closed. You're going, this would have been helpful. I shouldn't have to find something on Racer X or Motocross Action or some sort of other podcast. They should directly contact first thing. With that being said, MX Sports which is a different sanctioning body than Feld Entertainment with Supercross. They control the whole motocross. And they did a little bit better job saying that Hangtown was canceled beforehand. So, it's kind of tomato. I think they're trying, and I think with the internet, with maybe people like myself talking about it, they're noticing and they're trying to make things better, hopefully.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. If they're just trying, I think there's a lot more people than the top 10, 12 riders that they got to consider in their they're not going to have a race with 8 riders out there on the track. They got to realize.
Yeah,
there's a lot
could you
more
imagine
people.
going to a Supercross and you see 8 guys?
Yeah,
No, it wouldn't be any
It'd be no
fun. I
fun.
mean, yeah, you've got the top guys out there, but I mean, part of the race does come down to the, I hate to call them lappers, but the guys that are on back, and you want to see a full grid each time we come out. So I did see earlier this week, and it got me excited, but I have no idea what it means. But Supercross posted on, I think it was on Facebook, and I think it was Instagram where I first saw it. You had a post on there with the 3 guys, 3 of the 4 guys you mentioned, Tomac, Rocks, and Webb, and it just said, "It's not over." What the hell does that mean?
So they've canceled. They've canceled. Like we just talked about, Foxborough, Denver, Seattle, Indy, and then they canceled Vegas and Salt Lake City. More so postponed it because they say that they're going to run rounds 11 through 17 at some point in the future. And I take that as after the motocross season is over with in August, as opposed to the guys having an off season, for 2-3 months. And some of them decide to go to the MX of Nations, and then other people just take 2 months off and then start working for January for the Supercross season. They're just going to kind of flip the switch right away and try to knock out those next rounds in those 2 months. So right now the riders kind of are getting their off season in, is what I partake that. I was even thinking it would have been cool if they just had like one final at the Monster Cup and made the Monster Cup like a points paying race. I thought that would have been cool.
I mean, I guess my take on it is they're not giving up on it. They're going to try to do whatever they can, but I don't even think they can really say what it's going to be. I mean, I don't think we know what the country. And I say country because it's a U.S. Race
series. Yeah.
They don't really know what it's going to be, but I do like the fact that at least they haven't come out and said everything's done, don't worry about it, those sorts of things. So. You mentioned Pro Motocross. I mean, they have announced a tentative schedule at this point. What I think it was starting in June is what they said.
Yep.
I mean, you kind of touched on it a little bit. What impact on the Supercross series is that going to have, other than maybe we have like a week off, and then we're back in stadiums?
I don't really think it's going to have that big of an impact for the riders. I think it'll have more of an impact for the fans. And the riders, we have kind of a joke that, if you want to make money, you go race Supercross. If, you want to just partake, you go race motocross. And motocross the motos are twice as long, and it's a whole different animal. But I think it's going to affect the promoters more than anything, the local restaurants and everybody. If us as an economy doesn't decide that we're over this whole COVID-19, and I hope, I think we're doing the right thing with postponing everything. I don't want to see anybody get sick. Do I think the media is exaggerating it a bit? Yes, but when there's people's lives at stake, I completely understand. We all need to do our part. I just don't know if some of the promoters are then finally going to say, hey, I'm not going to do the Thunder Valley National or the Ironman National because I'm going to lose money. Because I know a lot of promoters just personally, and they usually just get the gate fee for the event. And so if you're paying $60 to $120, depending upon if you're getting a pit pass or not, that's a substantial amount if you've got 20, 30,000 people showing up. But if everyone is social distancing and, the local government, your state won't allow you to have more than certain people, well, then the event can't happen. And that's going to be unfortunate. And with the Olympics being postponed, not canceled, but on an odd year now in 2021, I think Supercross is just saying, hey, we're trying, but we don't want to actually announce something so that people can then, like myself, talk poorly about them by having a schedule out and then not being able to uphold what they said.
Because I think everything's a question mark. I don't think anybody truly knows when we can get back to everything. And I think they're just trying to do what they can to bring people along and say it's coming back.
Absolutely, Brian.
So if you're a rider at this point, whether you're, and I know it's going to be different between whether or not you're a privateer or you're a factory rider, because you've got, different levels of availability of things to you, whether it's practice tracks or whatever. But as a rider, what do you think these guys, what's going through their heads right now? What are they doing to prepare, stay in shape, all that stuff? What would, and maybe the other question, what would you do in this case if you're one of those guys?
If I was still brainwashed with the idea of making millions racing motorcycles, dude, I would be full blown, because I would be going, man, this is an awesome opportunity. A lot of people are going to not want to bother because everything's going on. And I'd be getting my credit cards. I'd be getting the best equipment I can. And I'd be going, this is an opportunity. There's blood in the water. I'm going to take advantage of it. And I might not have to there might not be 40 riders show up to qualify. I might just be able to sign up and I'm instantly in the motos. I'd be excited about this as a privateer.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. So either privateer or factory rider, we're kind of in limbo right now. We assume if everything goes off as planned, and I want to go back for a second what you're talking about the motocross and the promoters, because if people don't understand, that is different between motocross and supercross. Supercross is a sole promoter. It's all done by Feld. It's all done in-house by them. I mean, obviously they have partners, but they kind of run the entire logistics of that, have the TV contracts with, was it NBC? I forget who I'm paying now to stream it. I think it's NBC Gold Plan, which, by the way, we're probably not getting a refund on that, so just stop complaining.
Oh, they gave out the month of April is free.
Oh,
okay.
Oh, I didn't realize I got that. Huh.
But what happens if
not
you
that
pay
there's any new coverage, but it's free.
Yeah. What happens when you pay in the yearly plan?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Or did they just give
know.
us free content on there?
Yeah.
Is that what they did? We can watch horse races or something?
It's the same thing. I'm messing with my Icon ski pass. I'm like, hey guys, half the ski season is canceled. I gave you guys $850.
Yeah.
What are you doing? And they're just pretty much saying it's non-refundable. And I bought another $160 worth of insurance because as a rider, I'm accident prone, and I'm like, I could break my leg again or have some sort of surgery. I want to be able to have that money refunded. But of course, some small riding states, this is a complete nightmare for a lot of corporations.
So the like we just talked about, Supercross is sole promoter, but what you talked about, motocross is each round is I mean, I get that there's like an overall sanctioning body, but each round's run by someone else. Is that correct?
Well, same thing for Supercross. I mean, Supercross Feld Entertainment has to pay, I believe, the stadiums, to be able to rent them out, and they kind of do the same thing with the tracks. I know a couple of the owners of some of the nationals, and it's like anything. Nobody really wants to talk about the money, but don't quote me. From what I understand and what I've put together is promoters, each deal could be potentially different between MX Sports, and from what I've come to the conclusion is, at least here in my local round, is the promoter gets the gate fee.
Okay.
And not any of the t-shirt sales or anything like that. They just get the simple gate fee, which is awesome for them because, that one round could make you, $40,000, $60,000, $70,000. So they want to do that. And some of these promoters don't want to even do local events because it's not worth it. You've got the insurance, you've got the ambulance, you got the people that are working there. You end up half the time, if you don't have 350 riders, you're not even breaking even. No. So they don't really want to partake. But the national, absolutely, that is one event they don't want to miss because that'll set them up for the whole year.
So at the nationals, are the track owners then responsible for the prep, or do they have someone to make sure that it's kind of done consistently? Or
I don't know. I would say that would be part of MX Sports. They would have their traveling track crew, almost like Dirt Works, go out and they would rent the equipment needed. But I think it's the track owner's responsibility to kind of get the facility ready as far as get new truckloads of dirt and that sort of thing, get it a little bit more open, maybe have some new fences for the fans and that sort of thing.
Makes sense.
So with this break that's going on right now, I mean, you just mentioned how it could benefit privateer riders. Are there any riders off the top of your head that you think this would significantly benefit having this time off?
Gosh, I mean, I can think of a couple of pro riders like Tilco and Marvin, that he just had his ACL done. He should be being able to finish the last 6 rounds of Supercross. And Tilco, I wasn't sure, did he break his hand a couple of rounds ago? But that guy's been through so much with his PEDs. But as far as the privateers go, I think they want to just go racing because we don't really care about anything other than motorcycles. You live in such a small world with Supercross and motocross that you don't think there's anything else out there. And I learned real quickly that wasn't true just with my experiences. And it's interesting how small of a community Supercross and motocross actually is, per se, to the other big sports of the ball sports.
Yeah, you bring up
but I don't think I really answered your question. I think I just ran in circles.
No, but you gave some good points there. I mean, I don't think Marvin's deal runs through anything past the end of this year. So for him to be able to get back on a bike and go out and get some good finishes, being 100% healthy, may potentially line him up another contract with Red Bull KTM or some other team.
Yeah, and him right around 30. This is
it's kind of the cutoff.
Pivotal turning point for his career.
Now, would he come? Say there are only 2 rounds. Does he come back out for 2 Supercross rounds, or do you think KTM says just let's focus on the motocross championship?
Supercross is, from what I understand, is the majority of the money gets thrown into Supercross, and then the next, as far as the sponsors, as far as KTM, Honda, Kawasaki, they then take their money and put it into the MXGPs, and then the motocross championships get the third tier as far as the big guys' budgets. So as far as an industry, I would say that if I was Honda or KTM, I would say it's 10 times more important to have a good showing in Supercross than it is in motocross. And per se, Tomac won the last 3 seasons?
I think it's 3.
Yeah, I believe so. I'm going to look like an idiot if I'm wrong, but
it's 3. It's not 4. Is it?
I think
it was a 3-peat.
This was his first 3-time championship.
Okay.
So I think Cooper Webb made more money in his one Supercross last year than Tomac made in the last 3 winning of the championships. For an industry, a bike manufacturer, I think Supercross is first and foremost. So if I was KTM, I'd be like, if they're going to have the next 11 to 17 rounds after motocross, that's where you need to peak. And motocross, let's just get through it. And if you're in the points chase, well, obviously we're going to be behind you because that's good press for us. But we still want to focus on Supercross.
Everybody remembers Supercross. No, I mean, I like going to motocross events. They're great fan-friendly events to go to, though I'll say Supercross is a great family and friendly event for fans too.
Yeah, and I think it gets people in that don't ride as much. I've had people at my work that have nothing to do with motorcycles. Like, I sat down and watched Supercross. If a motocross race was on there, I don't know if it would hold their attention.
I mean, Supercross is way more television friendly too because you're confined into a smaller space. We can have all the cameras set up in there. Where you've been out to Budds Creek before. Like, that's our closest national. You can't see the entire track, and they do a decent job, with the TV coverage, but still, it's a much larger track. I mean, that thing's how many miles long compared to, it's probably, a couple mile long track, something like that?
A little under 2.
Yeah, versus a football field. I mean, you can see it a whole lot better. So, hey, Johnny, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to throw in a bunch of, I don't know, speculatory questions where we can get as creative as we want.
All right, well,
right up your alley, right?
I'll behave.
All right, we'll be right back. All right, now we're back on. That's our commercial. We played JT's commercial. We had to play a Two Wheel Rider podcast commercial because we don't get paid anything to do this. So, All right, Johnny. I think these are some pretty fun questions to go through. I think Brian, we're going to give you the opportunity to answer them. Brian and I might throw in our opinions on them. There's no right or wrong opinion because we don't know how any of this is going to pan out. We honestly just wanted to get together and talk motorcycles because it's a hell of a lot better than just sitting around in your house doing nothing. So, all right. So when we get back to the Supercross Championship, assuming we get back to it, obviously, you've got Tomac, Roxon, and Webb. Those guys, I think we can all agree, are still within the title hunt, the title chase. I know Webb's a little further back, but I think he's within about a race. Here's my question for you. There is the potential that when we get back to racing, that Marvin is back in, that AC, Adam Sansarillo, is back, Brock Tickle's back, Joey Savacci's back, and potentially other podium contenders are going to get into the mix, where right now it's kind of been the Tomac, Roxon, Webb show. We know those guys that I just named off have the capability, maybe not Tickle, not to knock him, but he hasn't been back very much, but he has been a top-level rider in the past. Knowing those guys can be back in it, knowing that they can be in the mix for podiums, does that help or hurt any of those title contenders between Tomac, Roxon, and Webb? And if so, in what way, how? Like, I think it's just going to be crazy that we're going to add like 4 or 5 guys back in that can be on the podium that we haven't seen in a while.
Well, I think after the first 10 rounds, they've sort of solidified the top 3, more so the top 2. I would say Tomac and Roxon are definitely the guys that aren't going to be too bothered by more guys joining the series. Cooper, on the other hand, he's not really the fastest guy ever on the track, but he does an amazing job of, I like to call it his racecraft, as far as he can just put himself in the right position at the right time. He can qualify outside of the top 10, but somehow win the race, even though he was a second off the pace. And I think with Muscan coming in, I'm going to say team orders.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah,
somebody comes in there, I'm going to brake check. I mean, we've seen it all happen before.
No, that's never happened before. Marvin's never pulled over to let Ryan or somebody go by.
Usually people try to be a little bit more inconspicuous about the whole thing, but Marv, I don't know if it's because he's French, but man, dude, he just like, I'm just going to pull over, have a big old sign that says, hey, they're paying me to do this.
Probably the only more blatant one I've ever seen was when Savacci just basically pulled off the track to let Tomac go around, but at least that was a Monster Energy Cup. That wasn't a...
Yeah, I mean, that's $1 million.
No points on the line.
I still don't think he ever got any money from that. I don't know.
He said he didn't. He said he never got anything from Tomac from that.
I would have. He definitely won't do that again.
I think Tomac on the podium said that he was going to give his mechanic like $10,000 or something. It's like, dude, you just won $1 million, and this guy works his ass off for you, and you're going to pay him $10,000. Again, not a big Tomac fan. I just was like, he should have at least gave Savacci $100,000 something, dude, because without that, and then KTM just, again, this industry, you're only as good as your last race. As long as you can make money for them, they're willing to use you. Savacci's an amazing rider, and speaking of somebody that could come in and mix it up and potentially get on a podium is Joey.
Yeah. He's got the talent.
And as far as having time off, him healing up, I think would be great. And that's some guy that has a personal vendetta, not only to some of the riders out there, but to the industry itself.
I mean, listen, let's be honest. He wants to finish in front of those green bikes.
Yeah, heck yeah, he does.
So, when we were going over questions and stuff, because basically, I mean, to be fair, we're just playing what ifs right now because we don't know what's going to happen.
Speculation's awesome,
but it makes it fun. It passes the time, and it makes us forget about some of the other stuff going on right now. But I'm just looking at this, going, I agree with you. I think Tomac and Roxon are the 2 fastest right now. But, in looking at adding in possibly 3, 4, 5 other top-level riders that have either won races or finished on podiums before, or at least capable of it, Tomac's known to get some bad starts. So I was almost looking at it from the standpoint of, yeah, we know he's fast, but we just added 4 or 5 more guys in that he's going to have to try to get around, when he has these bad starts. It's not even just bad starts, just mistakes like mid-race, and then he's got to run 6 more guys down. And when he comes up behind a Joey Savacci, I don't think Joey's pulling over anymore. Like, Joey's upset he lost his ride. Guy was rookie of the year, and Kawasaki kicked him to the curb. So I think you're right. I think he's going to come back with a chip on his shoulder. Tilco obviously wants to prove himself. I think is AC on a 1-year deal? I don't
know. I'd have to look it up, but he's clearly the fastest guy on the track.
Yeah.
And speaking of team orders, he's sitting 10th in points now because of breaking his collarbone. So you've got Marvin helping out Cooper, and then you've got Marvin is an excellent starter.
Yep.
AC is a super fast beginning of first 5-10 laps. So he could literally put himself in a position to slow the whole pace down, because not so often are these guys able to, early on in the race, get around him. He's going to set the pace. Mm-hmm. And if Tomac gets a bad start, their team orders could be, hey, AC, if you get out front, give it 90%, man, so that you slow everybody down, kind of make it a freight train, and then Tomac can kind of wiggle his way through and eventually get up to you, and then you just get tired and he wins the race. Yeah, so I can see that happening too.
Slows the pace down a little bit to allow him to work some magic.
So
somebody be the domestique.
Yeah. So somebody we haven't mentioned yet is Barsha, Bam Bam. I feel him
and Tomac.
I could be wrong, but if I'm Tomac coming back into this series, I don't want to be anywhere near that blue bike, because I feel like that. I mean, that could be a game changer right there. If Barsha's like, you know what, I'm not in title contention, but I've got good finishes. I feel like I'm getting a ride next year. I'm just gonna put this dude, in a tough block and not worry about it. I mean, it didn't happen at the Daytona round, but to be fair, Tomac was the fastest guy out there. I mean, he got around everybody, aside from, Webb did not want to let him around, but those top three guys were running away. Is there any chance that Barsha has any sort of play in, not the championship, because I don't think he's really within striking distance, but in determining the final outcome, given his run-in with Eli earlier this year?
Yeah, he's sitting 4th in points, and he looks like he's about 31 points behind. So,
okay, so he's
a whole race behind. So 26 points for first. I'm just going to be completely honest, and in my opinion, may it take it forever what it's worth. As much as these guys don't really like each other, they do respect that they're all on the track. They're all risking the same injury, and this is their job of racing. And being Tomac's got the championship, nobody wants to be that guy that ruined it for somebody. So with Tomac kind of solidifying that he's clearly faster than Barsha, I think Barsha's not going to push back that much. No matter whatever vendetta he has, if he was closer in points, or if they were clearly running a closer pace and their average finishes were closer, I think he would be more apt to take him out, brake check him, do something. Yeah. But I think at this point, he's probably just going to, if he gets by him, he's not going to retaliate.
Okay. Makes sense.
Unless Tomac takes him out first.
Yeah.
If he takes him out first, all bets are off. Barsha's going to get up, and he's going to have the giant, foam finger going after him.
I'm sure. So moving on to Roczen, I know I've heard you talk about it in one of your latest videos, but what's that kind of losing by a second at Daytona, then going into this break and then starting back up, kind of do for him? Where do you see him sitting, kind of going in here mentally? Does this break help him or hurt him after that kind of close finish?
Well, at the beginning of the season, I was thinking it was kind of over for Roczen. I was thinking with his injuries, after a while, injuries they start to add up on you. And I know Roczen still, mid-20s, a little bit later. I think he might be 26. Don't quote me. But that's a big deal to get over. And he super surprised me how he came out and just solidified himself as a veteran as far as having good racecraft and putting himself in the right position, not willing to just Tomac it, James Stewart it, win or die trying type of a thing. He's willing to get a 4th or a 3rd. I think going into the break, he's praying to the moto gods, just going, thank God for COVID-19. I hope nobody dies, but thank God that they didn't end the race or the season. So now I can get a little bit of a break. I can get more prepared, and I can come back rejuvenated and ready to murder Tomac for this championship. And Tomac, I think he potentially would have just felt good with, hey, let's just leave it. I know I've been in positions before where in some local arena crosses and supercrosses where we had massive rain or something happened where we had to cancel the race. And I'm like, sweet, I won the first moto. Like, I'm totally clear with cashing my check. And Kawasaki paying him $3 million plus to win the championship. I'm assuming check still clears if you only race 10 out of 17 rounds.
We talked about that offline. It's like they don't really care at the end of the day, if they get their check.
So you bring that up I want to get to that in a minute because I do want to discuss that a little bit further. But I just want to ask this quick question, and I think you've kind of already touched on it. So it's my understanding through AMA, in order to crown a champion, we need to run at least 70% of the scheduled rounds, which I think in Supercross's case, if my math was correct, because we've already run 10 rounds, at minimum we would be required to run 2 more in order to satisfy that rule. So if that's the case, then Cooper Webb's done, right? It's basically a 2-man race.
I'd have to look up the rule book because I haven't gone that deeply into it. But Tomac is just a couple points above Barsha, and so he's
Barsha or Roxon?
So he's sitting third. Barsha's fourth. So he's at 197 points, and Eli Tomac's at 226. So he's like 28 points, 29 points behind. Race. So he's a full race behind. So he's gonna.
He needs all 7 rounds.
Yeah,
in order to have
I think
shot.
Roger DeCoster is. Everyone wants to act like Roger DeCoster is this really nice guy, and I've never had the privy of meeting him, but from what I've heard, just off record, there's a reason why he gets shit done, and he kind of forces his riders to, treat them more of like assets. Like, I'm gonna just put some nos in you and we're just going to run it until you blow type of a thing. Mm-hmm. And that's what he expects out of these riders. So as far as Cooper's still trying 100% to win this. And he, just like I said, Tomac would probably be okay if they cancel the rounds. Webb is, again, super happy that they're going to finish these next 6 rounds.
Yeah, the more rounds, the better for him. Yeah, he just needs to make up points.
Yeah,
so any opportunity for that.
But he has the ability because he puts himself in a good position, and this is a good break for him with that gnarly crash that he had.
That thing was nasty.
Yeah.
Thank God that he went off the side of the track as opposed to trying to endo into the face of the triple. But still, he landed on concrete, which was nuts.
So, no, that. If we can get some footage of that up on YouTube for people that haven't seen the crash, like that was crazy.
You can feel the impact through the TV when we were watching.
That hurt me watching. Yeah. So this is just real quickly. Do you think, and I think we've already kind of discussed it about how Supercross is the ultimate when it comes to promotion and money and everything versus motocross. Could we potentially see anyone sit out motocross to prepare solely for Supercross, or maybe not try to go after the championship and maybe just use the last few rounds of motocross as a tune-up for then when we get back into the Supercross season? Do you see anything like that? I don't see personally. I don't see Tomac sitting out the motocross season because he has a title to defend. But would Kenny or would Cooper or We all know Chad Reed's sitting out motocross season, like he's not coming back. But would any of these guys maybe just sit out motocross and go, hey, I just want to come back and finish up the Supercross season and get ready for it?
All right, controversial topic coming ahead.
Sweet.
So it's more of a contract problem than anything. If you were signed up to race motocross, you have to race motocross. If the riders had to choose, I think they would say screw motocross because honestly, nobody likes motocross. It's downright in the dirt, gritty, and it's tough. You got 235 plus 2 lap motos, and that is, if anybody tries to ride that long, it's retarded, and it's completely different. And these guys, as much as the fans want to just be like, oh, these guys are professionals. I want to be like them. They love riding motorcycles. I'm just going to straight up say it. The top tier guys probably don't enjoy riding dirt bikes that much because you're pushing yourself at a high level. Yeah. You're running at like 150% all the time. You've got some sort of injury that's bugging you because you have to practice at such a high level to be able to race at such a high level so that you feel comfortable racing at that limit. And if these guys had to choose, they would go, hey, I've got a chance of making more money doing Supercross, and I'm not going to potentially get hurt in motocross. I'm going to just skip motocross out. That's my take on it. But that's not a real popular take.
Now, you mentioned a good point. I mean, obviously the money is in Supercross, the long grinding motos, but can you touch on a little bit of the danger factor between the two? Does Supercross carry a lot higher danger level practicing and racing?
Gosh, I guess if I was a physics expert or I had a degree in physics, I would say motocross is more dangerous just because the speeds are, averaging 50 to 60, maybe close to 70 miles an hour at some places. And you've got the huge gnarly ruts that you could twist your legs on, and you've got 40 riders versus 20 riders. Where in Supercross, yeah, you've got some big obstacles, but things are a little bit slower. You're at 30 miles an hour, roughly, but you have the potential of having a quick stop, from 30 to 0. And Supercross has definitely been getting more dangerous, just the way the riders are elevating themselves and the track designs, where these guys are quadding, and the level of difficulty is, I would say, is out exceeding what it used to be. Like if we looked back at Supercross tracks when two strokes were around, there were still doubles and triples, but you didn't see nobody really quad or jump through a whole whoop section, just jump the whole thing. And because of four strokes, the ruts have made everything so much more dangerous. And not to mention now that Supercross has gone to 20 minutes as opposed to 20 laps, now on average these guys are doing more like 24 to 26 laps. So that's a whole nother heat race basically on that track. And if you have these big four strokes that are cutting up the dirt and getting down to the wood that they put on the bottom there, you could jump quad onto a step off, and not notice that there's a little kicker there because it wasn't there the next lap. And then you're out, which we saw what happened to Roxon. He was using that same line every time, and he just had a quick little kicker, and then he had to bail off the bike. I mean, most of the time these guys don't necessarily get hurt because of their ability. They get hurt because of overriding the track, because you're going to have to slow down when that happens. So I guess that was a long answer. But,
well, it was. So just to recap, your personal opinion, you'd rather ride a Supercross track, you'd feel safer riding it than a motocross track. Is that what I got from that?
I have more fun riding motocross now that I'm retired, because it's not as scary because of all the sharp jumps and everything. But I do think Supercross is safer. Okay. If you're in it, I do think Supercross is safer.
I've seen you clear some crazy stuff out at your track where first off, I don't even know if I could carry enough speed just to like mini hill climb it and roll over it. But for me, I've been around some motocross tracks. To be fair, Brian and I are woods riders, so we ride totally different stuff.
Dude, that's gnarly stuff.
It is, because then we've got trees to contend with, but it's the jumps for me. Like I've been out on we did a track walk after the Daytona race, and I've done it before the race before too. The Supercross jumps, I don't know how well they translate on television. They are insane. The steepness, the height, everything else. Where motocross tracks, you're right, you're carrying the good riders are carrying much more speed. I'm going through at a much slower pace. I can handle the motocross track way better than I can the Supercross track. Are you any different on that?
No, it's the same thing. I think, racing, I can get around any pro national, maybe not do all the jumps, but you get around it. You look at a Supercross track and you're like, to us, non-pro riders, that's a whole different level.
I mean, Johnny Hopper, like that's the best name.
Let me just add to that a little bit.
Skies.
Sorry, guys. I don't mean to interrupt. It's actually more of a loaded question, because if you just take like a prep track, at the national before you let any of 100 factory guys or professional guys on the track, it's not that bad. But after you have them put 2 30-minute motos on it, that track is way gnarly. And the same thing can be said for a Supercross track. Like, I loved always being first practice or first qualifying because the track was smooth. I didn't have to worry about cupped out whoops or anything, and I didn't have to worry about any ruts in the corners, and that's what I enjoyed. But there's some people that really excel once the track gets extremely difficult, and we do see more injuries in Supercross. And again, I think it's more of a loaded question because there's more variables as far as these guys are pushing harder. There's more money involved. They're willing to take the risk, and the tracks, just because of longer the lap times are getting gnarlier as they go on. But if you were just to take a prep track for motocross and Supercross, these top riders, I'm still going to have to say that I think Supercross is safer just because the speeds aren't as high. Yes, you might have more small injuries, but catastrophic injuries, I think, are a little bit less just because the speeds are down. But that's being said, that's as long as the tracks don't have something stupid on it where these riders are trying to quad something that's extremely dangerous. So more than anything, that's a tough one to answer. That's a tough one to answer.
I think that was good insight because it's variables, right? It depends on, like you said before, all the riders get out there. Also, there's a bit of a difference between an amateur rider trying to attack a Supercross track and a trained professional.
No, you're right about that, and I've never been on a Supercross track, so some of the stuff you brought up, Johnny, I mean, it's stuff I never thought about. I mean, yeah, I can watch it on TV, but I also realize that I can't do anywhere near what those guys can do. Like, I would have trouble just rolling over everything and getting through there.
Well, in a Supercross track, I'm second gear around all my corners, third gear in the whoops. So I'm only shifting once per tay. But that's with a stock bike with some, I say stock as, like moderatively whatever I can buy as far as performance enhancing parts, as far as cams, big bore, whatever it is. Yep. It's still second.
So you don't have that 3-speed transmission?
No, I don't. I wish I could find something to ride, and I can't believe nobody ever talks about that stuff. Even in enduro cross, those guys are geared like 2 gears, and their suspension is so soft to get over the matrix and those rock logs. You would hate to have 6 gears trying to go through that stuff. You never get out of first, and so you don't need it, and so they take it out.
So I think we got a couple of questions left we want to go through. This is going to be one that some people are going to care about and some people aren't. But when a Supercross champion is crowned this year, whether officially or not, there's going to be an asterisk next to their name. Especially if we don't finish all the rounds. Even if we do finish all the rounds, we've had this unprecedented break. Someone's going to make up an excuse and go, well, they're not the real. So my question to you, Johnny, is does it matter? And if it does matter, who does it really matter to? There's going to be some people that don't care about it, and there's going to be some people that do care. What's your take on that?
Gosh, you got all these loaded questions going on here.
There's no right or wrong answer. I just want
no.
Your
There's absolutely no right or wrong answer. If I was the riders, I wouldn't care. I'd be like, dude, I go down in history. I'm a champion. I get paid. That's what my job was done. I achieved my goal. Everyone else can kind of just F you, per se. But as fans, if, let's say, Tomac wins and they don't finish all the rounds, what's going to be, oh, dude, you choked Mac. You couldn't get anything done before.
Fan board warriors.
You finally get something done. We just had the whole world had to shut down for you to get it to get done. But then, let's say he loses and Roxon wins. It's like, oh, dude, I feel you. The whole world shut down, this COVID-19. You probably even had it while you were racing. So, better luck next time. I don't know. No matter what, it's going to be, like if Roxon wins it, I think Roxon, it's going to come as just another variable as far as, dude, you've overcame so much. You overcame the adversity of even the ending of the world. Like, wow. I think Tomac has the most to lose in this situation, win or lose.
Brian and I were talking about this earlier, and one of the things we agree on, I think you're right. For the riders, they don't care. I'm getting my trophy. I go down in history. My bonus check's still going to cash. I'm good. I think from a fan perspective, first off, I thought the same thing you thought with Tomac. With if he wins, it's like, yeah, dude, but you didn't win a real season, so we're still not going to count it. But I didn't think the part with Roczen, like that's actually, he just seems to be a fan favorite and an empathetic guy, across the board. Where you might actually be right, where people are like, wow, that you've accomplished so much given this. The only one that I kind of looked at and said, well, I don't think it would affect him that much would be if Webb were to win, just because he's coming in as the defending champion, and it's kind of a, okay, well, you proved yourself last year. We're not really going to put a mark next to your name because this isn't your first one. And maybe he would get a pass on it, but I think you're right. I think Roczen may actually get a pass, but Tomac, I don't see him getting a pass on any of this.
Yeah, I think Roczen's the one that's going to get the pass on it. Roczen's been through so much, even people that weren't fans of him before, and maybe you're still not a big fan, just seeing what he overcame. I think, it's kind of a good comeback story, if you will.
He just needs to keep the red hair.
Yeah, I don't know about the red hairs.
All right, so final question, and then we're going to talk to you for just a second after this, and once again, thanks for being on. And I think
absolutely.
I think we're going to do this all around the table, but it comes with a caveat. So if what I read's correct, and we need to complete 70% of the rounds, it means we have 2 more rounds left to go. But if we complete all 7 rounds, like we'd like to for the full season, that obviously changes things. So, Brian, I'm going to start with you, then I'll go to Johnny, and then I'll give my pick. If we go 2 more rounds only, who do you have taking the championship?
I hate to say it, but I think Tomac has it. I just think he's on another level with speed right now. And I know everyone's like, oh, he's got that Tomac problem waiting to happen, a bad start. I just think he's going to go another level and take it home if there's only 2 more rounds.
Johnny, 2 more rounds left. Who you got?
Dude, you saw him and Barsha get into it, which I was so happy that they finally started giving some clarity with what goes on in the pits, because people talk smack all the time. Finally, they opened up a little bit, but we saw that look in his eye. He's willing to do whatever it takes. And so as long as he doesn't choke, he wins absolutely next 2. Or just wins the championship if we have 2 rounds.
To touch on that,
they'll put it out there.
As a fan, I love seeing that kind of stuff, the controversy, the argument. It shows the passion some of these guys have.
Yeah, Supercross shouldn't be as PG as everyone. Oh, I'd like to thank my truck driver and
Choir boys.
So I'm going to stick with Tomac too if we go 2 rounds. And also, I agree with what you guys are saying. I'm not saying we need to turn this into, professional wrestling, but it would be nice if we actually showed some personality, because I know these guys have it. Like, we've been around Aaron Plessinger. Like, he has personality, but all of a sudden when you get into Supercross,
it changes.
Well, now we all put on our little shirts with our sponsors on it, and we don't say anything we're not supposed to. So,
what I said about it, it's so fake.
Yeah.
It's so fake.
All right, Brian, we go 7 rounds. We finish out the season. Does that change your pick for the championship?
No, it actually, if I was on a percentage-wise, it would raise it to me for Tomac, because he has a round to kind of have a, one of those Tomac moments where he gets the bad start or maybe, a 5th to 7th finish. So I'm still going with Tomac.
Okay. Johnny, does it change it for you? You still sticking with Tomac?
I'm going to say Roczen.
And give me,
if we go all 7.
Give me your
I think
reasoning
Tomac
behind it.
is going to have another bad race in there.
Okay.
He's going to get in his head. I don't know if it's because his girlfriend's pregnant, but something's going to bug him.
That could have something to do with it.
All right, I'm going to go, and it's not just because I ride orange, but I'm going to go with Cooper Webb. He's a proven entity. He's won multiple 250 titles. He's the defending champ. He's who I picked at the beginning of the season. He's had his awful race already. I'm not saying Kenny's going to have a Tomac moment. I am saying I think Tomac's going to have a Tomac moment. But I love Kenny. We've seen him fade late in seasons, late in races before. I'd be fine if he wins it, but just for a pick to go down on the record, I'm going to take Webb.
Cool. Three different selections.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, we're all picking one of the top 3, so it's not like we're going out on a big limb.
Barsha wins.
Yeah. If Barsha wins, good for him. Like I'd like to see. I've met Eli before. He seemed like a nice enough guy, but I'm still not a fan. We'll just put it at that. And he might wear himself out digging post hole, digging post holes on his ranch or whatever. I don't know.
I've ran into most of those guys, and Ryan Villapoto was an a-hole. Tomac was an a-hole. And it's just, when you're at the races, you walk around with your chest out and you go, dude, I am the man. I am the dude. Get the heck out of my way. And that's the just level that these guys have to be at to ride at their ability. It's more of a UFC on the track than people realize. There's so much mental games going on in battles with themselves. And I think Tomac struggles with that a little bit. Per se, off the bike, he could be an amazing dude. I've only have bumped into him in the pits, and as a competitor, he's just kind of going, I'm above you. And most of those guys, Carmichael, all those guys have done that. Every single one of them.
Do you think they change a little bit once they're done at the highly competitive level, like a Chad Reed or and I know Ricky's not even racing anymore, but those guys change a little bit at that point and they become a little more they drop their guard a little bit?
I think like Justin Brayton, you walk around with.
I think he's just happy to still be doing what he loves to do.
Yeah, I think you've earned respect. You don't have to try to force it from anybody. Okay. And I'm a huge Justin Brayton fan.
Cool.
So,
Brian, you got any other
and
questions?
same thing with Reed.
Oh, sorry.
Same thing with Reed.
I love Chad Reed. Whatever. I mean, in Supercross and MotoGP, my two favorite riders are the two oldest guys out there because
the doctor.
Yeah, you got to go with Valet. So,
no, I think it's just cool.
If you know him, we need a doctor for this COVID-19.
Yes.
So I'll text you a meme later that I had about that. It's a pretty funny one. So, all right. Any more questions for you, Brian?
No, I think I'm good. I learned a lot.
No, I mean, Johnny, it's great having you on. If you guys haven't checked out his YouTube channel, I'm gonna on the video. I'll tag it in the up in the corner or whatever, but I'll also put it down in the description. I don't know what he's going to be talking about with Supercross out right now, but hopefully that motocross season picks up here pretty soon. I find it highly entertaining. I want people to go over and check that out. But hey, man, I appreciate you taking the time to be on with us today.
Thank you for having me on.
We'll do a little bit of an outro here, and then we'll talk offline for just a minute. So,
okay.
All right. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, which we're available on all of them, we would appreciate a 5-star rating. And if you don't want to give us 5 stars, just don't give us a rating at all. That's fine. So, if you have any questions about anything we went over today, this will be posted on the Two Wheeled Rider Facebook page. So you can go ask your question there. If you're watching on YouTube, throw your question down in the comment section. I'm sure Johnny will check those if or to be able to reply back. And I think that's about it. So once again, thank you guys for joining the Two Wheeled Rider podcast. My name is Mario Orsini, joined by
Brian Boyer.
We'll talk to you guys again soon.
Yeah. Well, awesome, guys. I know you guys have a busy day ahead, and I appreciate you. And I do follow. And send me that link once it's up, and I can put it on my Instagram too, and whatever I can do to try to help you guys out, I will.
Yeah, no, it means a lot.
Appreciate you being on. So I'll talk to you
guys
at some point, and we'll get you out here on the East Coast at some point and get you on a dirt bike and throw you out in the woods a little bit.
We got some good riding out in West Virginia here. So
I bet you guys have got good moisture here.
He's got about a 600 acre farm we can go out on with A, B, C, and D loops, and
so I can die out there and nobody will know.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll send a drone out to look for you.
Yeah, we buried a couple people in some of the hills out there.
All right, man. Have a good one.
Awesome, guys. Hey, it was nice meeting you, Brian.
Nice meeting you as well.